Hello everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but through the marvels of modern technology, you'll still be able to hear me droning on as if I were. I'm going to talk about the transition from the cataloguing team to the Research Data Service. I made this jump in October 2013 to work through a 20-month fixed-term pilot scheme which would see the service move from a JISC-funded project to a fully embedded project into the institution's library service. Research data management is a new area for many libraries and it calls for a slightly different skill set. That said, there are also some core transferable skills to the discipline, not least because some of the core issues with RDM pose some very familiar problems. Slide 2. I've pulled out a few open questions in RDM that should strike a chord with anyone who has been actively involved in library cataloguing. So the first and most obvious is, what am I trying to describe? The truth is that research data is as varied and often as complex as the research itself, which makes the job of describing it a little bit tricky. There is a clear need for rules, schemas and authorities in RDM, but they have yet to exist in the way that they do for bibliographic domain. This is all work that needs to be done. To compound this problem, the research funders require varying levels of secure storage and access for research data, ranging from 6 months to perpetuity, which, as they say, is a mighty long time. The technical infrastructure required to maintain a stable and accessible data set is neither simple nor cheap, and the responsibility often falls with the institution to provide this. The FAIR concept is surprisingly new in RDM, but it has its antecedents in the relationships between the library user and book. Although nowhere near as mature, they are clear parallels. So it's worth talking about FAIR in a bit more detail. At Bristol University, all the work towards making data fair is done by the repository. You can see this on the data repository on screen now. Think of this front-face discovery portal as the catalogue. It has a single search bar at the top and a faculty browse capacity at the bottom. Rather than have any main entry points, the search box relies on keyword matching. The options can then be narrowed using facet browsing, which you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. Here you can see some options to narrow your search by either tag or by data format. The metadata schema used is similar to Dublin Core. At the bottom you will be able to see some tags which are added by the researcher. Not only does this enhance the findability of the record through specialist terms, but it gives the repository a diverse but unfortunately uncontrolled vocabulary. It is hoped that this can be used as a way of extrapolating a more rigid hierarchy of terms at a later date. Discipline-specific metadata schemas are thinner on the ground than you might think, and only when there are internationally agreed schema for datasets will interoperability and reuse be achievable goals. Then of course finally you have to consider who's going to do all this. The researcher, the library, you? So if this hasn't put you off, you probably want a few details about how one gets into research data management. I can certainly tell you a few things that stood me in good stead. Some I already had and others I had to develop. Speaking from Bristol University perspective, I can safely say that library knowledge provides the core skill set for RDM, and the more you have, the better. RDM doesn't call on one particular aspect but many, and in a new combination. Equally important is understanding the research culture at your institution. Bristol is part of the Russell Group and places particular emphasis on its research undertakings. The investment of the university into RDM reflects this. It is important to find out about as much of the research process as possible from whatever sources you can. I hope I've already covered the need for a good grounding in metadata already, but it's worth underlining here that areas such as RDM might point the way for where such niche library skills are going to head in the next few years. My web skills in terms of finding, analysing, grouping and disseminating information have taken a quantum leap forward in this position and was one area I tried very hard to develop in my previous role. In a small team it's important to bring a broad skill range to the party, and I can honestly recommend a good grounding in analysis, social media and website development amongst other things. The Research Data Service website is the focal point of many of the things that the team do, be it supporting researchers in writing their data management plans, from offering advice about publishing and anonymising datasets. The site is a constantly evolving environment that must reflect the most up-to-date information. Keeping this up-to-date and, most importantly of all, accurate is often the biggest part of my job. It is important to take responsibility. In the views of the institution, we are the experts in this area, and we have to be proactive and persuasive in our dealings with the research community to convince them of the importance of good research data management. So, to sum up, if you're thinking of getting into this kind of area, then I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you like something fast-moving and frontier-esque, then this is definitely for you. And if you're genuinely interested, then I urge you to track down people who work in this area and talk to them. It's a huge subject, and the rules change almost daily. To even get a sense of where it is and where it's going will require an expert viewpoint. And even if you do understand it, you'll still need to execute it at the institution level. This involves developing new partnerships with academics and support teams who lie far outside the library walls. With research data management, it has to be you that makes this happen. So that's it for my presentation. Normally this would be the point where I would ask if anyone has any questions, but in this format that really isn't going to work. So I'll keep it to a simple thank you and enjoy the rest of the event.